I can live with that for hours. Good morning, everyone. My name is Kyle Gorman. I'm here from the Public Realm team at the city's Department of Transportation. We are the team that is engaged with everything pedestrian and public space related on New York City streets, and we work in all 5 boroughs. This morning, I'm here to just give a little preview of the 2026 Open Streets program. The application is now open. We'll go over a little bit of a recap of the 2025 program, talk a little bit about what is in store for 2026 and how to apply and how to participate. So I'll just zoom us right along. So in 2025, we had the biggest and best year yet of our Open Streets program, which was in year 6. It began in 2020, so we're heading actually into year 7, lucky number 7 for Open Streets next year. We typically launch the program every single year around Car-Free Earth Day, which is a huge initiative of the city's Department of Transportation, which coincides around the end of April, where we really do a lot of climate focus, sustainability focus, active and healthy living focused programming and events all across the city. This one in particular on Evelyn Place. We had over 40 new schools and other partners join the Open Streets program this year, which is a really great milestone for the program as we continue to grow. This is a preview, actually, or a recap of our event as a part of our Trick or Streets event series, which we did for Halloween this year. Lots of great events all across the city, including a signature event on Manor Avenue here in the Bronx. Trick or Streets, we had over 150 events all across the city, just promoting the use of streets as public space, especially on the busiest day of the year for pedestrians, which is typically Halloween. We had all grades of festive programming, Halloween-focused events, and so on all across the city. That's really just a sort of very brief recap of the 2025 program. We've seen a lot of growth in the Bronx, which is super exciting, and we hope to see more in 2026. So now I'll just give a little bit of a brief overview of what's in store for 2026. So I should have started with this, but I assume everyone already knows what Open Streets is, but it is a now permanent program here in New York City. The council passed legislation in 2021 making it permanent, and then DOT adopted a set of rules and guidelines and criteria to make a set of guidelines for the public to follow when they apply to the program in 2024. It really allows for quite a lot of different uses beyond just driving and parking, which are the uses that we typically associate with our streets, but everything from economic development, supporting schools. Open Streets is the new home of the Play Streets program, which many of you are probably familiar with, having existed in New York City for a long time, and a great way to build community and promote the use of streets as a venue for arts and cultural-based programming. We work with a slew of all different types of organizations, both formal and informal, schools, community-based organizations, business improvement districts, mission-driven nonprofits, and so on, to execute Open Streets citywide. So what is some of the things that we're looking to expand in 2026? First and foremost is continuing to promote schools in the program. Our commissioner has been very focused on connecting schools and open streets and making sure that schools have not only access to safe streets surrounding the campus, but also maximizing the use of streets for educational enrichment and other sort of learning opportunities. This actually, next year, we're going to be more directly offering funding and staffing support to schools so we can see more participants in the programs. We have a new set of rules that pertains to outdoor dining on open streets. Many of you might be familiar with Dining Out NYC. That's the citywide program for outdoor dining that the DOT manages. There is a whole different set of rules for outdoor dining on open streets in our plazas, so that will be a new layer this year. We have some slight operational changes with how the program interfaces with impacts to bus and truck routes, and there is just a singular deadline as opposed to 2 deadlines as we had in the past. So like I said, we work with all different types of formal and informal community-based organizations, block associations, bids, civic associations, mission-driven nonprofits, educational institutions, everything from pre-K to colleges and universities, as well as other types of like-minded individuals like groups of businesses, houses of worship, so on and so forth, that really just see a common benefit in maximizing the use of the street as public space. There are 3 main types of open streets. The first is our limited local access. This is a bike and pedestrian priority street, but it still allows cars in a limited way where they're essentially treated as guests. Bikes and pedestrians, you'll see in a few pictures, really get to take over the streets, but we still allow for parking, emergency access, loading, pickups, drop-offs, and so on. The next is the full closure type of street. That is like a no cars except for emergency vehicle on a time of day restriction. Primarily it is also to serve pedestrian and cyclist use, but also allows for more vibrant types of programming, outdoor dining, opportunities for events, and other types of activation. And then the full closure schools type of open street, you should really associate it with like the former Play Streets program, but Play Streets is now a part of the Open Streets program. We allow for more than just like recess and outdoor learning opportunities. Schools can also apply to temporarily close their street during the pickup and drop-off hours where, a lot of parents especially are walking or driving or biking to pick up their kids. So that's a relatively new layer that's distinct from the Play Streets program of the past. There is a specific criteria that is for each of these different types of open streets. You can get a deeper dive on what exactly is required based on the different types of open streets on the program website. I'm not going to go into great detail, but just know that there is a specific criteria for what is eligible and what is ineligible for the different types. So here's just a few photo examples of the different types of open streets. This is a limited local access open street. You can see bikes and pedestrians taking over, but still allow for those limited vehicle access, movements, and parking. The full closure, as you can see here, no cars. Behind the folks is an emergency lane, but you can see there's a lot more opportunity for expanded outdoor dining when the street is closed. Like this is a bar that gets to set up into the street. This is a poke bowl place on Vanderbilt Avenue in Brooklyn. They hired a band for the day, and people are allowed to gather and enjoy and use the street in a new way. And then this is our full closure schools type of open street, which, like I mentioned, allows for a different type of range of activities and activations that promote the use of streets as public space for schools in particular. This is a school on Beaumont Avenue, which has been one of our strongest supporters of open streets here in the Bronx, and we have really enjoyed working with them over the last few years. So Open Streets is an application-based program. The application is entirely housed on the DOT website. If you go to nyc.gov/openstreets, you can get, of course, all the details about the program, but also a link to the application. And when you go to apply for the program, there's, of course, the basic days, times, and location details that you need to input, but there are 5 distinct document requirements that you must upload when you apply. The first is a site plan, just as you imagine, the sort of basic map and layout of where things are going to go. The next is a management plan. We want to know how you're going to make it all happen. The next is the outreach plan. In addition to how you're going to make it happen, how are you going to let everyone know, especially different stakeholders that might own a business, live on the block, or have some other connection to the street in a different way. In the first year of applying, you must apply with 3 letters of support. If you're a returning application, you don't have to do those letters of support. It's only a single-time requirement. And then those partners who are requesting funding from the DOT must put together a budget proposal, sort of just estimating on what your costs are so we can use that information to potentially offer funding to your organization. We have lots of examples on the website of exactly what we're looking for. We're always ready, willing, and able to talk through these requirements with partners if they have any concerns or questions about how to put these together, but just know that they are a required element as a part of the application. And here are just a few examples of what we're really looking for. It doesn't need to be a Picasso painting when it comes to the site plan. It can be very just basic, sort of delineating out where the general activity space is going to go. What is top of mind for us, though, is this emergency lane. We want to make sure that our partners at the fire department, New York Police Department, and so on have, of course, the ready access to the street as needed. Here's just a sort of basic layout of what the management plan looks like. Like we will have X amount of staff putting up the barriers. We'll have X amount of staff, watching them throughout the day. We'll have these many people cleaning and sweeping, and so on. Same thing for the outreach plan, just sort of delineating how you're going to let everyone know using a lot of different types of multilingual and inclusive different strategies in order to inform stakeholders of the open street. And those, as you might expect, a few different sort of just highlights of letters of support for the types of sort of positive letters of support that we're looking for. They can come from elected officials, they could come from the community board, they could come from stakeholders on the block, businesses, institutions, and so on. And finally is the budget proposal, which we have a few different online examples to show exactly the different types of things we're looking for. So in terms of what next steps look like for applying, the application is now open. It's been open for a little less than a month. Like I mentioned, it is entirely online at nyc.gov/openstreets. The deadline, which is really important for most folks, is January 31st, 2026. This includes schools that might want to start in the spring or have some sort of summer programming next year, as well as anyone else who is going to be participating some way in 2026. If you are a school that is only looking to apply for next academic year, so starting essentially around September or Labor Day, you have until March 31 to apply. And like I mentioned, we are here to help. We want to, of course, meet with anyone as they navigate the application process, give them tips and tricks on how best to complete it. So you can email our team at openstreets@dot.nyc.gov, or of course reach out to our colleagues at the Bronx Borough Commissioner's Office to talk a little bit more about how to apply. The last thing I want to mention is just some of the resources and support that we offer to our partners to make this happen. I recognize that this does not happen for free. It requires a lot of staffing, labor, and funding to make it happen on a daily basis. So we have three sort of main buckets of what we do to support our partners. We offer a sliding scale of funding that's on a reimbursement basis to our partners. It takes into account how large or small the open street is, whether it's in a priority investment area for our agency. We also connect our partners to different types of funding and grant opportunities that come up throughout the season. We do offer staffing support through a contract that we have with the Horticultural Society of New York. These are folks that are deployed to your site to help set up, to break down, to sweep, to clean, to provide programming, and just navigate different types of city processes. As you might imagine, this is probably one of our most valuable and in-demand resources, but we do try to deploy it to our highest need partners, especially in equity geographies across the city. And like I mentioned earlier in the presentation, the idea is to extend these resources to schools in the coming year. And beyond that, we're always here to help navigating, like I said, all of the sort of bureaucracy, permitting, applications, and so on. When it comes to managing the open street, we also provide all of the critical infrastructure to close the street, the metal barriers, tables, chairs, signs, cones, and so on. We also offer free programming throughout the year. We have an entire initiative of a programming layer to the public realm team where we use a list of different providers to activate open streets and plazas across the city. There's well over 100 partners on this list, everything from a circus to a pop-up library. I think there's a voodoo doll making class. There is literally anything and everything you could imagine on this, this list. It's also very inclusive. It has programming opportunities for all ages and abilities. And in certain instances, DOT is able to fully fund this programming at open streets across the season. Like I mentioned, through a partnership and a contract with the Horticultural Society, or the Hort as they're known, we deploy lots of services in close to 100 sites all across the city. Their bread and butter is all of the beautiful planters that they do all across the city. We have hundreds, if not thousands, of planters in our open streets across the city, but this is the contract that's able to deploy those operational and personnel-related services to make it all happen. So just as a quick reminder, application is open. January 31 is really the key deadline for most partners, except for schools that are looking to do something next academic year, so starting in September 2026. And we are here to help. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, feel free to just email us at openstreets@dot.nyc.gov, and we'd be happy to help you out. And just the last thing that I'll mention is that as a part of the process that governs the program, there is a 45-day notification period for all electeds and the community boards to opine on the open street application before it is ultimately approved by DOT. We've been doing this for the last few years, so if you've had a community board, or if you've had an open street in your community board or in a district that you were elected for, you would have received these 45-day notification letters from our borough commissioner team, and then that is the sort of time that you get to ask questions, flag concerns, flag opportunities, so on and so forth. So look forward to those letters in just a few months. And that's my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. One second, Mohammed. Before we go there, I neglected to have our Bronx folks introduce themselves.
Hi everyone, Teresa Cruz, acting Bronx Borough Commissioner, New York City. And I'm Holly Malone. I also work with the Bronx Borough
Thank you. That was actually my question. He was pointing the commission.
Oh, sorry, yes.
Over the commissioner, but thank you. But
Those
my
lovely
question
ladies.
is, can you simplify? I know you did a very good job and it was very quick. I didn't get half of them. So can you just simplify in, what is the application, how much is the grant, who qualify to get those grants?
So Open Streets is open to virtually anyone. It can be a formal organization like a business improvement district, a block association, a civic association, a nonprofit. It can also be an informal group of neighbors or businesses on a given street that have some sort of interest in doing Open Streets. So the council, when they crafted this legislation that made the program permanent, really casts a really wide net with the different types of program partners that we could work with. I've been at DOT for over 10 years. I remember before the pandemic, a lot of this work was really focused on commercial organizations, business improvement districts, and really one of the silver linings of the pandemic through Open Streets has been this ability to work with all different types of partners. And nearly every single street in New York City is eligible for the application when it comes to Open Streets. So we are working with everyone. And there's no cost to apply, and you can get funding up to $20,000 as it stands right now, and all of the programming, the technical support, and the staffing support is at no cost to our partners.
But what will be the project? What the organization has to do in order to get the grant?
So in order, first and foremost, to start, you need to apply to the program, being accepted to the program, of course. We have a process that will probably change how funding is dispersed to our partners next year through a partnership with the Citizens Committee of New York, a nonprofit here in New York. So I don't want to get into the nuanced details because it's likely to change in the spring, but it's a really great opportunity to get funding to partners more quickly. As anyone who's ever navigated getting money from the city, it's not always the most expeditious, and we are not beholden to certain procurement limits like we've been in the past.
What does the project entail? What type of work need to be done? To get this fund, what they have to do?
They need to do the Open Streets. So it's really access to funding for programming, for events, for activities, paying some of the staff the barriers, to help with communications, to print out signs, to host a party, really anything and everything that comes along with managing a public space.
So what is the name of the program? Open Street?
Open Streets, yes.
Open Street?
Yeah,
Right, you'll get a copy of this presentation, Mohammed, so you'll have all of the information on here that you can share with William and with any other organization in the district. If they're interested in applying, all the information will be on the slides that I send you.
Yes.
We also sent the
Excuse me?
community boards the email with all of the information already. So
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
We're also
Cynthia?
happy, and I'll just mention, sorry, before, we are happy to go to any community board too, or any sort of gathering you're having of people who are interested, so feel free to reach out to Teresa and Holly to get us on your schedule.
So with a couple of years under your belt already as far as the program, have you guys run any data in terms of where the bulk of the I'm just curious, where the bulk of the applications are coming from? Are they coming from community boards? Are the bulk of them coming from bids or from schools? Can you share some of that?
Yeah, it's always really surprising every year because there's always because you think you're at the threshold. There's we know everyone now. Especially since the Department of Transportation, we virtually work with every single New Yorker all across the city. But we've seen, especially in the last few years, a lot of applications from schools. We've done a targeted investment of $250,000 in the Bronx to get more schools to participate. So there's really been a big push intentionally from our agency to get more schools to apply. We've also seen a lot of these informal coalitions of folks. These are the like-minded informal groups of folks who they want safer streets, they want streets as public space, so on and so forth. So we've been seeing a lot more of that, but it is always surprising to see the sort of places that people apply or even the organizations that apply. So it's always a little bit of a surprise.
Ms. Byrne?
Hi. Is there a max or is there an infinite number of applications that are accepted? And have you ever encountered a hard no?
There is no max. We have seen growth every single year since the program became permanent in 2021. We had close to 250 sites last year, and we're at that threshold for this year as well. There are definitely instances where it has been a no. Admittedly, not so much in the Bronx, which is great, but Some instances where it's been a no is if there's a healthcare facility, like a hospital, that would be significantly impacted by this closure of the streets. Sometimes people also don't love their street that's enclosed where they live, or if they have a driveway or a business. So usually we're able to sort of work through those politics of managing the street in new ways. There's certain restrictions on buses. Schools, of course, can't impact a bus route, nor do we allow any partners to impact the SBS routes, which is a big initiative that we do with the MTA. We encourage everyone to reach out before they apply to sort of just suss it out a little bit, like, do you think this is good, this is not good? But usually we're able to land on something. I recently did like just the back of the envelope calculation on the approval rate, and it's almost like 90%. So we get to a yes usually.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Thank you. I just wanted to ask, where do you see applications coming from the most in terms of boroughs, right? I know you mentioned 250K target initiatives to schools, so I was wondering if, it's more a general answer just to kind of get an idea maybe why that is, or if the Bronx is up there in terms of applications, so if you can answer that for us.
Well, I can say you beat Staten Island by a long shot, because there's only one there. The Bronx, I think, is third, the first being Manhattan, the second being Brooklyn. There's a pretty significant amount of schools in the Bronx that actually participate in the program. We haven't, in recent years, had so much of the the outdoor dining type of open streets in the Bronx. We did for a while have one on Alexander Avenue, where there's those groups of restaurants in the South Bronx. So you all are in third place, but we'd love to get you to second or first.
No, we want to get it to number one. So.
Okay, works for me.
Carla and then Ken.
So one, I have a question. Can someone apply for only one event? Or does it have to be a multiple days application?
For the open streets, it is a minimum of at least 1 day a week across 4 weeks. That's not like a rule we die by, but we definitely want to set a distinction between what is a SAPO permitted event. You all are probably very familiar with SAPO and the block parties and street festivals that they permit. So if you're really just trying to do something once, SAPO is your best bet. If you're trying to do something once with the goal of growing to something larger and bigger in the long run, we're happy to work with you on navigating those processes, maybe lending some of our furniture and other infrastructure, but that is really capacity that's reserved for someone who's like, I want to start small in year one, but maybe grow to something more recurring and regular in year two and beyond.
Okay, and my second question is, I recently got a complaint about construction happening on one of the streets and then, having a conflict with the open streets application. In those instances, do you just decline the open streets application, or how do you navigate that conflict for?
Yeah, it's, as we all know, our streets are very dynamic and see a lot of different uses and users throughout the year. It really depends on the construction. If it is a major capital reconstruction of the street, probably not. If it's like just, for example, replacing the curb ramps, which DOT's been doing a lot of work on in the recent years, that's usually manageable. It's really on a case-by-case basis. But DOT does work closely with our permitting division to sort of try to mitigate as many of those conflicts as they come up. But as we know, construction kind of can come out of nowhere. Con Ed, even just this past weekend, was digging up a plaza that they manage in Brooklyn, and they didn't tell anyone. So sometimes we try to get ahead of it. But if the gas is not running or the steam isn't running, we want to make sure that is able to be restored. So, like I said, we're happy to talk to anyone in advance ahead of applying if they want to sort of just ask a question related to those issues potentially.
Ken? Get the microphone. Here's the microphone down. Oh.
Thank you. Thank you very much. You said that there's no requirement for an applicant to be an incorporated entity, right?
That's right.
So if, let's say, an unincorporated entity was to use a fiscal sponsor to make the application, can an entity make an application on behalf of somebody else, of a different entity? That's one. And if, let's say, what is in effect a fiscal sponsor, something like, let's say, for the sake of argument, partnerships for parks, was to make an application on behalf of a number of Catalyst Park programs. Would they be able to do that if there was more than one contiguous, coffee please? If there was more than one discontiguous space, or would those all have to be separate applications?
So we do allow for those informal entities to work with a fiscal sponsor. That's quite a number of our partners do that. I think our preference is that we don't have to work with that, but because of the way that the legislation was written, we have to have informal entities apply. So we are very accustomed to working with fiscal sponsors as needed. The city's procurement rules as they stand right now would only allow, let's just say, Partnership for Parks to do a maximum of 3 sites, and they can be distinct and separate. It can be community group 1, 6, 7, whatever, it doesn't matter. They don't need to be same place or anything, and it can be citywide too. The partnership, though, that we have with Citizens Committee, which we're looking to launch next year, will make us probably not have to follow that 3 sites rule. The Citizens Committee has a contract with, it's actually with the Office of Emergency Management, and any city, it's a master contract that any city can use. And it's basically like allowing a Citizens Committee to disperse funds to small nonprofits for community-oriented uses. So these small, tiny nonprofits don't have to deal with our ACO and accounts payable, which is like, tearing out your hair sometimes. And then Citizens Committee, which is a larger organization, they can wait the time that it takes to get paid from the city and navigate all the paperwork. So that will be a huge game changer for our funding, but we would still, of course, allow for fiscal sponsors in those instances. But the Citizens Committee contract is flexible where we haven't yet made this decision yet, but theoretically we could pay individuals. Citizens Committee has a granting program where they do pay individuals now, so there is some flexibility in it. We're trying to sort of be mindful of the city's very robust procurement rules, but also trying to getting access to funding as easy as possible for our partners. So that was a very long-winded answer to say yes.
Nancy, go ahead.
Good morning. You mentioned that, excellent presentation.
Thank you. Thank you.
You mentioned that doing something on a main thoroughfare with a bus route was ineligible for this program. What about if there is a really excellent Green Street small park enclosure in that area? Would that be an eligible place for, let's say, a health organization to do outreach, community health, education, recruitment, enrollment, et cetera? And would that involve a parks permit?
So starting with the buses, bus routes can actually be impacted on Saturdays and Sundays. We just don't allow ever the impact to SBS routes, which I think there's, only 2 or 3 in the Bronx? 2, yeah. BX41?
BS12.
12, yeah. So those ones you could never impact. I mean, those are also like, it sort of would be like closing Fordham Road, which, like, let me just be honest, I don't think we're going to be doing that. The bus routes, though, like smaller, limited, or just the sort of local routes can be impacted on Saturdays and Sundays, just so that's clear. DOT's jurisdiction only extends to the streets, so open streets is really only pertinent to the roadways that are within our right-of-way. So if you were doing something that's in the Parks Department jurisdiction, it would require a Parks permit. But a lot of the green streets, like you brought up, are typically adjacent to what we call a slip lane, which is like just a tiny little street that's sort of like only for people making a right turn or whatever. It's next to those little green triangles. Those are actually excellent candidates for open streets because it really doesn't truly impact traffic all that much. It maybe has a minor impact to parking, but that closure and that little extra space not only makes the street a lot safer, but it ultimately can create more space for all the vibrant programming and opportunities that I highlighted in the presentation. So those are great sites.
Any other questions for Kyle? Thank you very much, Kyle.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Again, I will share this presentation with everybody this afternoon.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Thank you, Darissa. Thank you, Helen. Our second and final item is from the Executive Director of Healthy People regarding diabetes is a public health crisis. We also have here the Borough President's Director of Health, Maknoor Jara, who is here as well. We've been doing a lot of work on diabetes. Borough President actually had attended at least 2 events last week with regard to diabetes, and we are very happy that healthy people are here this morning.
Hello. Good morning. My name is Dr. Anthony Stalandi. I'm the Executive Director of Help People. I have often given talks before community boards, and one of the great things about it is that it could be very dynamic. Even simple questions like, do I plant a tree or do I plant a plant on a street can be a thriller, right? With full of plots and heroines and heroes, and oftentimes guest speakers. I want to recognize, before I begin, in the back, Chris Norwood, who's the founder and past executive director of Help People, and Nancy Kleck, who's a colleague of mine. Help People is a small or medium but well-known public health agency in the Bronx. We've been around for 30-plus years. I recently assumed the executive director position about 5 months ago, so I'm still trying to, get my footing with the organization. Today, I'm really going to talk about turning the tide on diabetes in the Bronx. I'm going to present some data and tell you about some things that we can actually do as a borough to stem the tide of diabetes. So I'm going to briefly talk about the difference between type 1 and type 2 diabetes, how it disproportionately impacts the Bronx. I'm going to talk about diabetes-related illnesses, and talk about the enormous financial cost of diabetes to the city as well as the state. And then talk about some strategies to address diabetes and then a call to action. So type 1 diabetes, and oftentimes a lot of people get it confused, type 1, type 2 diabetes. Type 1 diabetes is an autoimmune disease. Your body does not make insulin or makes little of it. You have to take insulin every day for the rest of your life, and usually it's diagnosed as a child. Type 2 diabetes, your body makes insulin, but it doesn't use it the right way. That causing your blood sugar to go up. It's mostly common in adults, but as we're seeing quite too often, teens can get it too. And one of the important things to remember, it can be managed through healthy eating, exercise, and medicine. Type 2 diabetes is reversible, and we'll hopefully during the question and answer period, we'll get to that. This is a map of New York City, and it highlights the percent of adults with poorly controlled diabetes in the city. As you can see, there are 2 places in New York City with a high prevalence of uncontrolled diabetes. It's the Bronx and Central Brooklyn. So I took this map, and one of the questions that I asked myself is like, can we drill a little deeper into the data and take a look specifically at the Bronx and then specifically at community boards? And so this is data that came from City Health Dashboard. It's a dashboard or data set run through NYU, and it sort of triangulates a lot of data sets. And I sort of hierarchically listed the community boards with the highest percentage of adults with diabetes down to the lowest. Community Board 1, 3, and 4. Well, just general overall, 10 of the 12 community boards in the Bronx are over the city average in terms of adults with diabetes. The city average is about 11.6, and 10 of the community boards are above that. or higher. 2 community boards, 8 and 12, are below the New York City average. And hopefully I'll take questions. I mean, one of the questions that I would have here is, why does 8 and 12 have such low prevalence of diabetes? And then what's going on with the other 10, especially the top 5 community boards with high prevalence? This is another chart from the New York City Department of Health, and it really highlights the previous chart, taking a look at the Bronx and then central Brooklyn. But as you can see, the Bronx has a very high rate of adults with diabetes. There are diabetes-related illnesses, for example, retinopathy, which can lead to blindness, and lower limb extremities, amputations. The Bronx has the highest amputation or LEA across New York City, with 7.4 rate of 100,000 adults. And the Bronx had twice the rate of the rest of New York City with amputations. About a month ago, CDC put out a report that said 1 in 3 adolescents, 12 to 17, have been diagnosed with pre-diabetes, right? And that's alarming. And if you think about if you have a faucet running into a sink, right, that has some water in it, right, and you keep putting water in that, eventually it will overflow if you don't have a way to empty that sink, right? And so the idea is, if that sink is filling, you rush to turn off that faucet. Right now, we're not turning the faucet off on diabetes, right? We have a number, 1 in 3 adolescents, and I added some other things here from the CDC. As you well know, the CDC's been going through some changes lately, and some of the things on their website have been taken down, and other things have been promoted. So, for example, this 1 in 3 adolescents diagnosed with diabetes that came out about a month ago, that was based on a data set, a national data set, right? The CDC put it out on their website without giving any clarification on how those findings, the methodology behind those findings. But routinely, what has been presented is 1 in 4, 1 in 5 adolescents. So I would say anywhere between 1 in 3 and 1 in 5 adolescents are diagnosed with pre-diabetes. And when I say adolescents, I'm talking about from 12 to ages 17. And we know that people who are diagnosed with pre-diabetes, there's a 25 to 50% chance that they progress to diabetes in 5 years or less. Now, there's a significant cost to diabetes. There's no doubt about it, right? And these are just a few of the headlines from websites, newspapers, journal articles talking about the cost of diabetes. The most recent statistic is it cost the U.S. $412.9 billion, right, to address diabetes. And that's the medical cost of diabetes. Diabetes is expensive in New York. How many people have diabetes or been diagnosed with diabetes in the Bronx? Does anyone know?
Yeah, I have it.
Oh,
He said how many people?
no, how many?
Oh, whoops. Well, that's one.
I mean, that's another question that I had, is that how many people have diabetes, know someone with diabetes? Raise your hand. I mean, that's the majority of the people in the room, right? There are about 160,000 people, right, just in the Bronx who've been diagnosed with diabetes. And so the direct medical cost in New York State is about $19.2 billion. The indirect medical cost is about $310 million. And that's an underestimation. The out-of-pocket cost per patient is about $1,600 to $2,500 per year. And you think about individuals who are living below the poverty, the poverty line, and they having to pay that out of their pocket just for or to control or manage their disease. Just a little bit about the expense on the healthcare side. 24% of all hospital stays across the U.S., right, was incurred by patients with diabetes, diagnosed with diabetes. 24%, almost a quarter of all hospital stays. 64% of diabetic healthcare costs are covered by government entities, but 36% not. Right, and I'm talking about like Medicaid, Medicare, and things like that. 40% of medical expenditures attributed to diabetes patients with attributed complications like poor circulation and peripheral blood vessels, which again leads to amputations. So you have, you can't feed your leg, you get a cut, it gets infected, you know, and it goes downhill from there. I will also add, individuals who, our healthcare system does a really poor job at providing individuals who get amputations with prosthesis. They do a horrible job, right? And so we have to address the amputation rate, but we also have to address, if you do get an amputation, how do we assist you to get around and to have a higher quality of life that you want to have. Diabetes is a very complicated disease. It's a very complicated disease. And if you think about the social determinants of health, right, like housing, food insecurity, limited access to nutritious foods, all of those things drive the high rates that we're seeing in our communities here in the Bronx. And it also acts as a driver to healthcare costs across the healthcare system. This was when I came across this data from 2001. I was sort of blown away that 18 out of all of the ER visits in 2021, right? 18 million of those, right, were among adults with diabetes. 18 million ER visits. And many of the visits were for individuals 65 and older. Oh, and also there are race and ethnicity disparities. You know, black folks are visiting the ER much more than their counterparts. Their white and Hispanic counterparts. All right, so we've talked about how terrible diabetes is and the prevalence in the Bronx. associated amputation rates, and the cost. So what do we do, right? What is the strategy, right? Well, first of all, there is a citywide diabetes reduction plan that Chris Norwood and some of her colleagues worked on. I would suggest that we take up the plan. Make an intentional effort to follow the plan. Also, at Help People, we do a lot of work around diabetes and chronic disease, right? And one thing that runs through all our programs is that it's peer-led. We go into the communities, identify individuals who have lived experience, we train them, and then I don't like to use the word deploy, but we deploy them back into the community to help individuals who have diabetes self-manage their diabetes. That's what we do, right? So I would suggest to you as a strategy is to support community-based organizations that train peer educators from the community. And one of the things that we're starting to do is that individuals who have to do their work requirements for SNAP or Medicaid, we're asking them to come to us to get trained so they can go back to their communities and help. Identify individuals with diabetes or pre-diabetes, but specifically with diabetes, and help them manage their disease. I've done a lot of work in substance use. And many of you all know that substance use in the Bronx is an issue. And one of the things that we do for overdose deaths is what? Naloxone saturation, right? SAMHSA, CDC, naloxone saturation. You train, you give out naloxone, you train people on how to use it, right? And what does it do? That leads to less overdose deaths, right? Why can't we do the same thing for diabetes? Saturate high-burden neighborhoods with evidence-based interventions, like the Diabetes Self-Management Program, Diabetes Self-Management Education, and the National Diabetes Prevention Program. Understand the role of diabetes in education and behavioral change. And that may sound simple, but when the stop smoking campaigns, right? You tell people to stop smoking, right? And expect them to stop smoking. It doesn't work like that, right? Behavioral change doesn't work like that, right? You have to have education. You have to have capacity building, skills building, and things like that. Diabetes is the same way, right? If you want people to eat better, if you want people to, to exercise, you need to show them and explain to them, this is the reason why it's important to read a can. The labels, the food labels, right? To see what sort of sugars are on there, right? And then for my native-born Spanish speakers, right? How many times have you seen the instructions or the labels or the food ingredients in Spanish, right? So how do you work with our native Spanish speakers to use technology to actually translate what's on the back of a can, right? Strengthen and encourage partnerships among safety, primary care, hospital system, and community-based organizations. Go back to your community boards and ask them, and ask your hospitals, your Montefiore's and your Lincolns, and ask them, do you all truly partner with community-based organizations? And what does that partnership look like? Is it like shared decision-making? True shared decision-making? About how do you get or achieve the outcomes that your hospital or that you want your community to do. And so, you know, this partnership between primary care, hospital system, community-based organizations, oftentimes I see it's just lip service. But if we want true outcomes, to achieve true outcomes for diabetes, we must have this partnership. Increase investment in health-related social needs and nutrition security. Part of the 1115 waiver was to actually, for these regional hubs, to work with community-based organizations and uplift them and do some capacity building work so that they can identify social determinants of health within the community. What I would say is that that system, if it's operating in your community, you really should take a look at how it's working and if it's working for those community-based organizations. And I could say a lot more about that, but strengthening policy and structural intervention, I think that how we look to you, the community board leaders, to actually take a look at the citywide diabetes reduction plan. This is the QR code. You can just take a picture of it and go directly to it. Chris Norwood could talk a little bit more about the diabetes, the citywide reduction plan, as well as some of the diabetes self-management program that we do, and that we are so trying to get part of the 1115 waiver, so that community, peer-led, community-driven DSMP can be activated in our communities. And then finally, the call to action. Invite health people to discuss diabetes at your community board meetings. Mohammed left, but Thursday we are going to Community Board 9 to talk about diabetes, right? And so one of the things that I would encourage you to do is to reach out to us and say, hey, come and talk about diabetes. One of the big things about this is we need to mobilize the community. We need community mobilization around this issue. And one way to do it is to work through the community boards. Pass community board proclamations to address diabetes and take steps to implement the citywide reduction plan. I talked about adolescents, right? If you look at the Department of Education and the school health programs at DOH, they actually do have education programs around not decreasing sugary drinks, drinking sugary drinks and things like that. There needs to be more, right? And we need to engage community-based organizations to go into the schools and have these sorts of discussions. And we also need to identify youth champions who can actually be the peers to go in and talk about these things. And when you identify the champions, you have to train the champions. So at Help People, we would love to train you to go into the schools and talk about diabetes prevention. And again, champion awareness of diabetes self-management to your colleagues, to your community-based community board leaders and at City Hall. Just frame it diabetes. If you're talking about health, have you talked about diabetes? If you're talking about sodas in school, did you talk about diabetes, right? And again, thinking about the social determinants of health of diabetes, it is a connection that you can, where you can center diabetes discussions, and then be an advocate for funding diabetes self-management education and diabetes self-management program, which I'm going to ask Chris to come up and talk a little bit about the diabetes self-management program, and then we'll entertain questions. Thanks a lot. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Mr. Chairman?
Yes. Are you seeing a common theme between not just only diabetes but other diseases together? Because you can see someone having cancer but also having diabetes at the same time. Are you seeing a trend in that increasing, or is it just I don't know, like not common or so on?
No, that's a good question. I think we see comorbidities like across any chronic disease, right? And so asthma, as we all know, asthma is huge in the Bronx, right? It's a high prevalence of especially childhood asthma, right? But there's asthma in adults as well. And so, mental health issues. So, to answer your question, I would need to take a look at the data to see about the comorbidities with diabetes. And maybe, Chris, you can talk a little bit about that. But what we do know is that individuals who are overweight, right, it is a predictor, right? It's a risk factor for having diabetes, right? And so, the comorbidities, I think that how, once you have one chronic disease and it's uncontrollable, right, it opens you up for other things.
I also want to say one other thing. So I do read labels when I go out food shopping, and I do have an app called, I don't know if you've heard of it, it's called Yuka. It's a free app. You can go on it, download it, and what it essentially does is if there's a product that, it'll rank it based off on a scale of 1 to 100, and it'll let you know if the product is good or bad based off its ingredients or what it has in the product. So if you have like even water, for example, there's some ingredients that I didn't know that are in water, like sodium carbonate, and I'm like, interesting. And then it'll kind of rank the water based off the scale of 1 to 100. So just
fantastic.
YUCA?
Yuka, Y-U-K-A. Yeah. And I use it all the time when I'm going food shopping.
Bilingual? No.
No, it's English, and I think it's just English, if I'm not mistaken.
Joetta?
Thank you.
I'll just, sorry, go ahead.
Yes. All of the information that you presented was correct. My question or statement relates to many of the people in our neighborhoods, 1, 3, 4, or either 1, 2, 3, 4, rely on SNAP benefits, or as well as feeding programs that are offered within the communities. Now, do you have any information on the nutrition provided in the meals that are offered, as well as food distribution programs? Do they meet dietary needs for a person with diabetes? For example, a food distribution program includes rice, corn, celery, plantain, and that. But very rarely do you get kale, broccoli, collard greens, which would balance the rice and the corn and the other vegetables that maybe not be as beneficial to a person with diabetes. Notwithstanding the fact that if a person is receiving a meal or receiving a distribution package, may not have the facilities to cook your raw vegetables. Now, how does that impact what we're looking at on that diabetes scale, and why that diabetes scale is so high for our communities?
And that's an excellent question. In fact, right before this meeting, I was talking to Jutan in the borough president's office, and we are. What Health People would like to do is to look at some of the diabetes data at a census block level, which is much more minute, smaller than a zip code level, right? And then overlay on that map some of those things, those factors that you're talking about, like the percentage of SNAP beneficiaries, housing insecurity. And the reason, and it doesn't really get to your question, which is a really important one, but what it can do is identify areas where targeted interventions can happen. And so I think how that, you know, using GIS can actually, you know, point to those things. But that question that you said and you asked, I think is an important one. Chris?
Yeah, well, I think, I think almost all these questions are a matter of community mobilization, and that sounds like a very big issue. But what we want to mobilize for is the first step of that, of having more and more people in the community informed and able to teach other people how to help themselves. In the citywide diabetes reduction plan, which, by the way, has been sitting there, approved by the Department of Health for 2 years, never put 1 penny toward implementing their first diabetes reduction plan, while they spend $1 billion in city tax levy money in the Department of Health on all other things which do not impact the community, and especially the Bronx, like diabetes does. So I think a real first mission for the community boards and the city council members of the Bronx is to become a champion of that plan and insist that the city implement it. The first step in that plan, as Dr. Salandy mentioned, is to saturate neighborhoods with good education, especially the diabetes self-management program. That's where we train people to teach other people simple ways to take good care of themselves. To answer your question about one of the first things that happened when we had our first peer educators, many of them went to their senior centers and said, you have to change the food here. We didn't tell them to. But that's what happens when you have an educated community. They will start where they go to make things better. You know, it's too big a job to try and do from the top. The community has to be educated and empowered. The DSMP is 6 sessions. It's really simple and engaging. You know, you've heard of 50 ways to leave your lover. It shows you the 50 ways that sugar are hidden in your food so you can find it. It gives people, every week they make their own plan of what they're going to do, like just one thing they can do, because people with diabetes often feel very disempowered. They feel stigmatized. So once people start to do something, you know, maybe I could give up 1 soda this week. I did that. Oh, now I can do more. It's just meant to be, you know, so friendly and community empowering. And one thing, if that plan is implemented and people have the education, one thing you will stop seeing is these disgusting dialysis centers on every corner of the Bronx. It is horrifying. Dialysis is a big business. Warren Buffett, who you may have heard of, yes? He's the biggest investor in dialysis in the United States. It's a $90 billion a year business. And why the Department of Health can't implement the diabetes self-management program and help people learn simple ways to bring down their sugar, because most of that is because of diabetes, is something that we in the Bronx have to address. Actually, the DSMP is more powerful in preventing end-stage kidney disease than the GLP-1 drugs are. People who take that course the next year have 90% fewer new diagnoses of kidney disease than similar people. You know how people do studies like this. They get 300 similar people and they do one to one group and then they see what happens. 90% fewer diagnoses of kidney disease. What do you think that would mean here? You probably know people with kidney disease. You probably know people who have been tethered to dialysis for the rest of their lives. And it is truly unnecessary. It is one of the complications of diabetes that is utterly most preventable. And we have to insist, neither the city nor the state, nor Medicaid nor Medicare will pay for bringing this. They will have education, you know, confined to hospitals And that can be good education too, but not everybody can get to a hospital for 6 weeks in a row for a 6-week course. We like to bring it, you know, to senior centers, to public housing. We actually got some money once to put this course right in homeless shelters. The City Department of Health itself evaluated it. It evaluated that having this course in homeless shelters brought down the emergency visits by 45% in 6 months. So there is something you can do. Insist that that plan is implemented. I don't even know anymore. I don't know how people who had health departments and Medicaid and Medicare cannot give people the education, because for chronic disease, education is the vaccine. It's just the same as withholding a vaccine. So I think I said enough, but I hope we can work together and that the boards will pass resolutions and the city council members will take this forward, and the Bronx has to take the lead because no one else has.
Thank you. Thank you, Chris. Are there any other questions for the group? Cynthia?
So as a community board, let's say we would like to implement a diabetes self-management program, or we'd like to host a space for someone to do, is that available?
No, it is not, because no one will pay for it. But you have hit on exactly what the community board should do. Every single one of them should pass a resolution and send it to the Department of Health. We want to host the DSMP. We demand to host the DSMP. Politely. Not that politely.
Ken?
That's really, you've hit on it.
I want to make a statement. Make a statement. Thank you for that. I'm very passionate about diabetes. Diabetes runs in my family. So it's really about a mindset. And so within my Health and Human Services Committee, we already have like a sugar board, right? There's a lot of things that my committee, the Health and Human Services Committee under Community Board 3, we have tried to do. A lot of steps we have tried to take in educating our constituents regarding diabetes. I do agree with you. You just got to know your audience, right?
Right.
And it's just a lot of factors that go into retraining a mindset of how to eat. I'm a Black American woman. My family derives from the South, right? Mm-hmm. So they came from plantations, right? Really, they did. And so we were given the worst types of foods, right, to eat. However, because they were working in the field, they were able to sweat it out. So a lot of these conditions were not noticed at the time. But now we don't move enough, right? And so that's why, now it's taking effect on us because we don't move enough. We even overcook our vegetables. And what I'm learning as a Black woman, right, because I was diagnosed about 5 years ago that I had diabetes. It scared me so bad because I saw my grandmother at 4 years old. She had a sore in her leg. And then next thing you know, I was like, what am I looking at? It was like all white and pink. I was looking at bone, but I didn't notice because I'm a 4-year-old. I go back to see her. Now the leg is gone, right? And then, I forgot this part. I walked in there. I was like, what's that smell? Okay, right? So when I was telling my uncle, he was like, you can't remember? You were 4. No, I do remember. She had a leg, and then it was gone. So when I got diagnosed that I had diabetes, like my whole mind changed. My whole mindset changed. I was eating vegetables for breakfast. I was like, this is what I gotta do? And I found the vegetable that I liked, and I like kale. I'm not crazy about broccoli, it's okay. But I'm just saying, for me, it was kale. Kale was quick, it's easy to make, and you can eat it raw, you can cook it. It's just for me. So that's what I try to educate people on when I find out that people have diabetes in my family, or just at a function and people start talking about, diabetes. Because normally with diabetes, a lot of times you also have high blood pressure. A lot of times you might also have high cholesterol, and you should be seeing a cardiologist, right? But these are the things like in the community that I serve, that I grew up in, these are the things that I try to educate the constituents on. And it's also about, getting healthy vegetables, right? So we don't really have that in our community. You buy your vegetables today, you better cook them today if they're fresh. Because tomorrow they're not going to look the same. I have never seen anything like it before in my life, right? You go to Manhattan, you go outside of the Bronx, you go shopping, you buy vegetables, you can have it in your refrigerator for 3-4 days. It still looks the same. You could cook it and nothing's wrong with it. So it's a lot of things that we have to address. I am definitely, with having this resolution, I would like for somebody to come again to our Health and Human Services Committee so that we could talk to them and address this matter. But I'm telling you, you have to know your audience, and you have to really, it's a mindset. We're talking about people that are, they lack a lot. Not just education, they lack finances, they lack motivation. It's a lot of things we were not raised to do.
Well, that really is the value of the group. The DSMP is always in groups of 8 to 10 people. Mm-hmm. And they start giving each other tips and support. Mm-hmm. And, I get this at whatever store they have it, or this is how I do my food. We've had people actually come into the groups with a big thing of soda, carry it in, and say, oh, sorry, and say, you're not getting this out of my hands. And we just say, when you want to get it out of your own hands, that's fine. We're here to give you the information. And you're right. I mean, people need that support. They need not to feel alone. They need to be in a place where they don't feel awkward to ask questions, etc. And that's why this program is so great. And it's led by people from their community. And they know that. And they've seen those people go forward. So they begin to believe they can go forward. We should train you.
Definitely.
Just to close out, Ken?
Oh, thank you very much. Dr. Slandy, I just sent you an email inviting you to table we have a farm stand that is seasonal. So our last tabling day will be the last November, I think that's the 26th. So if you'd like to present there, and maybe we can arrange for a demonstration at that time, that'd be very good. I was wondering, can you talk to what is the role of healthy food enforcement? To what extent does the FDA fail to adequately enforce having unhealthy food on the shelves?
Yeah, I think if you were...
That's a big one.
Oh, and also Robert Wood Johnson, I believe, is currently funding a demonstration program at Hunts Point to get healthy meals into bodegas. And I was wondering I don't remember them talking about diabetes specifically being targeted in this, but I was wondering if you were participating in that.
No,
what data is being called.
we're not participating. And I know Robert Wood Johnson, they have pilot programs like that all over the country. Yeah. I certainly would look into that. I'm not familiar with that specific pilot program. In terms of like the FDA, I think I think we had this discussion about the sugary drinks and like the FDA and sugary drinks being allowed for some of the beneficiary benefits program. Chris, I don't know if you want to.
Well, I could just update that. City, oops. There was always a rule that cities and states could apply to the federal government not to include sugary drinks and candy in their SNAP benefits. Right. However, before this administration, no one ever who applied, New York City did apply, got approved to do that. Now 12 states have been approved to at least take sugary drinks and soda and candy out of their SNAP benefits. I'm not aware that New York State has applied, but basically now any state that does, they will get approval to do that. And I'm not, how shall I say, I'm not a major advocate of prohibitions because I've seen people do things themselves over and over again, which is better. But I do think it's terrible for public money to pay for even those amounts of sugar, especially. They're wrecking kids. Yeah.
Final question.
Final question.
Talking about sugary drinks, how about, zero sugar drinks? It was replaced with sweeteners, I think it is. I forgot the other word. It starts with an A.
Aspartame.
Yes, yes,
If
yes.
you can't pronounce it, don't eat it.
Okay. Now I know. Because now you're seeing the
Some of that stuff is just as bad, and I will tell you why. Because it actually acts almost like a drug. The sugar substitute lowers people's blood sugar, but then they have a rebound, and now they want sugar more after taking the non-sugar. It's a little hard to explain. But the good rule is
don't take it.
don't take it. Thank you.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you. It's so nice to be here. Really
Thank you.
appreciate it.
We just have two quick announcements before we close. The first is related to Hurricane Melissa that occurred a couple of weeks ago, and how the borough is coming together on November the 22nd to gather a relief drive to gather all of these items up at the Bronx YMCA on East 229th Street. I believe this has already been shared with all of you, so please share that with your social media and bring the items that they have requested to the Northeast Bronx YMCA. And then secondly is November is an event hosted by the borough president, and Bronx Father is Taking Action. It's an event for supporting men's mental, physical, and emotional health. And this is being held at the Bronx Legends Boxing Academy on Walton Avenue, and you wear blue for Movember. So those are the two events that the borough president is hosting between now and the end of the month. Are there any other announcements from anybody?
Yes. I want to bring up the idea of maybe, doesn't have to be for our next borough board meeting, but in future borough board meetings, discussing the effectiveness of community boards in our communities, right? We might have similar issues overlapping community boards. How can we address them together? Have discussions like, housing developments, right? Cleaning our streets, and, any other such topic that may be pressing for other community boards, that many community boards are facing.
Okay.
Just as an idea,
Sure.
if that's okay.
No problem. We talk. Yeah.
Another topic that I would like to see addressed in this meeting is a borough-wide emergency management committee.
Borough-wide Emergency Management
Emergency Management Committee.
Committee.
Yes.
We have one?
Not per se. There are individual
There
CERT groups
in each
in
board,
each of the boards, but you're looking
but
for
not a
something more.
borough-wide, because I think that
Citywide, I guess it's a citywide borough emergency.
Right, there's a large citywide agency, but I think you're
Yes.
talking about something a bit more specific.
to the Bronx.
Thank you. Right, it's at the CERT, right, okay. With that, just a reminder that the next Borough Board meeting will be held on December the 8th, here in room 405 at 10 a.m. We are working on the agenda for that item, and you will also be getting very shortly the calendar for next year, 2026, so that you can place those dates on your calendar now. With that, I want to wish all of you a happy Thanksgiving with your families, and have a blessed day with all of them. If there's nothing else, we are adjourned. See you.
You should tell me when you're absent.
Yes.
Okay, you're absent.
For December 8th, I'm out.
Okay.
Yes.